Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to my channel. And welcome to part 2 of a video that I started last week, I guess, a series on the fall of Disney. And in particular, the fall of Disney Magic, how it's just become a different company now. It's lost that sense of wonder for children. It's lost that sense of resonance for people of any age, and how it's going to, it's becoming a different company in a lot of ways, already has, and how that's gonna lead to its downfall if it persists in this. And what it's persisting in is a social agenda driven everything. That's its motivation for the story choice, the story execution, the marketing, and everything like that. And it's already seeing some of the consequences. In this video, I want to go a little deeper though and talk about how Disney is succumbing to this this push of iconoclasts in our culture right now. And iconoclasts, I'll define that first. Historically, I'm talking about the Protestant rebellers, reformers, protesters, whatever, for the Catholic Church, who didn't believe in using statues, using images, using rosaries or whatever. They thought that's just idolatry. You know, how dare you? You can't use any kind of image of God. Didn't matter if it was of a saint or even of Christ himself, quite often. And the iconoclasts would go into churches and tear down the statues, tear down the images, destroy them. That they were doing. Now, they were, in their minds, they were morally correct. They were on the right side of history. They were justified. They were the good guys in their mind. They were the good guys, so they were going to go tear down something that somebody else made and somebody else used to help them contemplate divinity or whatever. Now, there's more to the other side of the story. Obviously, that's a big historical thing, but that's enough to draw the connection that I'm making here between that and what's going on in our culture today. The iconoclasts today are tearing down the hero's journey in particular, but they're tearing down mythology that we watch. They're changing. They're going in and changing already established stories. They're trying to rewrite them, trying to project their own agendas over them, trying to do away with some, forget about some, trying to bring back more. Is more and more power they gain, the more they do this. So the icons they're tearing down, like I said, the hero's journey, ideas of masculinity or femininity, let's get rid of those. We don't want any of those, and so on. So that's what we're seeing, and Disney succumbs to. Now, I should make one thing clear, because in my last video I talked about how growing up I would always kind of roll my eyes at people who say, oh, Disney, so they've just made all of those fairy tales so vanilla and blah blah blah. And I rolled my eyes at that because I said fairy tales go through different versions. That's what folklore does, you know, to find its place. And it doesn't have to be the same. I mean, the Grimm's fairy tales that people point to, they weren't even the original version. The Grimm brothers, they themselves had that strong Protestant, almost puritanical, were they Huguenots? No, that was at the same time. Anyway, but they were very strict about religion and whatnot, and they stripped those fairy tales of all the sex. They didn't mind the violence so much, so they kept the violence in, but they stripped those fairy tales of all the sex and the sexuality and whatnot. So that, you know, Grimm fairy tales aren't even the original versions or whatever. And I've never been in this channel about the original versions. So I need to make it clear, because it's a common question. It's a fair question. You know, if you have a trouble with, if you don't mind different versions of fairy tales or something like that, then what's the difference between that and people trying to make different versions of stories today, like be it Superman, Star Wars, or whatever? Fair question. I always assume that people have stuck with my channel for a lot longer or watched a lot of my videos, because the difference is that once a story has reached its place in our consciousness, once it's cemented and it's become a mythology in our culture, it affects our culture, it affects our personal psychologies, it's become iconic. The character of Superman is iconic. And once you turn around and decide to completely deconstruct him, that does not come without consequences. And that's what I speak out against. So the fairy tales, of course, they were known. Fairy tales were out and about when Walt Disney decided to translate them to his movies, but they didn't reach that, you know, idea of Snow White or Cinderella. They didn't come to be the cultural icons and household names like they are now until Disney did their versions of them. So now that Disney has those versions of them, you couldn't go and make, you know, you can't go make a Snow White 2 and have her decide that the prince needs to give her half of the kingdom and treat her fairly and blah, you know, that's just, but that's kind of nonsense that these iconoclasts in our culture would do, and Disney keeps kowtowing to it. Yeah, look for that from Disney soon enough. So that's the difference there. Superman or superheroes, they take a little bit of time to ferment into, not ferment, that's a bad word. They take a little time to set into the cultural consciousness, so they might go through some versions. I've talked about Superman, Batman, how they evolved a little bit until they got exactly where the culture wanted them. But once they're set, you can't go messing with them without horrible consequences. And that's what I talk about on this channel. And that's the consequences that Disney's facing. They face the consequence, on the one hand, of taking away these symbols that we can aspire to. So masculinity, any kind of delineation between masculinity and femininity, let's try and do away with that. The whole nonsense, little subtle ways too, like in Wreck-It Ralph 2, when they brought in that scene where all the Disney princesses were there having a little slumber party or whatever. Well, the Disney princesses, each in their own way, are symbols of the feminine. Symbols of different versions of the feminine, you know, slightly askew with each princess. And each one of them has a level to be aspired to. Human nature loves it, though, when you take those levels of aspiration and you kind of mock them a little bit. And why human nature loves it is because it makes us feel like we don't have to try as hard. Yeah, that was an unattainable goal. We don't really have to worry about that. And it doesn't matter, you know, it can be something beauty, it can be health, it can be just basic responsibility, whatever it is. Human nature loves that. That's why people, you know, the Snyder Bros who love, you know, Man of Steel, it's so much more realistic because we got to see, screw your realistic. This is Superman. Superman is not. There's something to be said for a character like a Spider-Man who needs to show us that it's okay if we fail, we need to get back up and try like he does. But that's pointless if we don't have a Superman or a Captain America or somebody there who never fails and shows us that's the end result we need to strive for. Even if we're not going to make it, that's what we need to strive for. And women love this in general. Women in general, I can't speak for every single specific one, but women in general love it when you take a story or there's a commercial or whatever that has a girl, you know, trying to be sexy or you know, meet some sort of standard of beauty and fails, and it makes a big comedy joke out of it. They love that. They just go crazy over that kind of stuff, and that's part of what the princesses having their little slumber party in Wreck-It Ralph 2 was about. And then doing their, oh, you know, did a man have to save you or some BS like that, you know. And it's funny that Disney made a lot more of that than anybody else did. No one really cared about that scene. No children, certainly, that I know of, cared about that scene much. But all of the right little Twitter talking heads, you know, shot up a funk about it on Twitter. And, oh, this is so great. And then Disney, I've seen in stores, they'll put out, like, the dolls of the princesses, you know, in their like pajamas from that Wreck-It Ralph scene. No one's buying it. None of the kids want that crap, because kids have this innate response to what real resonant mythology is and real resonant hero's journey stuff is. One example I used, keeping with Disney properties, one example I used on a live stream the other day is look at Star Wars, okay? The Star Wars original trilogy. One of the things that critics, you know, people try to silence criticism. Anything, you want to criticize any of the new Star Wars stuff, people try and silence you by saying, that was just your Star Wars. That was just your generation, and you're just clinging to that. You need to let us have ours now in our generation. That's a reduction of the argument. That's not exactly what's wrong at all. The original trilogy, the story of Luke Skywalker, was incredibly profound. George Lucas went by Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey to a T, and he created a story with Luke in particular, and the other characters filled their roles into this properly and became very resonant in their own ways. But Luke Skywalker in particular, that's huge. Yes, he starts out as young, as naive, as having to learn a few things, but he's pure from the beginning, as I've said before, talked about before. And he strives and tries to do the right thing, even when some of his mentors tell him, no, this is the right thing to do. He listens to his heart and what he believes is the right thing in terms of going after his friends to help them, and then in terms of trying to save Darth Vader, his father, from himself. You won't find anything remotely like that in Disney Star Wars. No one is going to remember or care about Rey, or Finn, or Poe, and even a shade of resemblance to the way that people care about Luke Skywalker still today, and still will care about him. Well, they may care about him if they remember the original trilogy, and if Disney hasn't completed and successfully replaced that original trilogy with the give up, weak you know, kind of soy boy Luke Skywalker that they made in Last Jedi. But Last Jedi was a conscious, that was not just a subversion of expectations for the heck of it. Let's just see what we can do, you know, story-wise. That was a conscious decision. That was, hey, that character right there, the iconoclasts in our culture looked at classic Luke Skywalker as a symbol of the patriarchy, and that's just a man hero, and we need to tear him down. We need to show him with some faults and make him weak and old, because Disney Star Wars is going to be about a woman, right? That's Kathleen Kennedy's only input, as though that makes for a good story. You know, she couldn't, as the executive producer, had any more direction for the people to helm this awesome, mythologically profound and resonant franchise of Star Wars. No, all she said, here, JJ, make the main character a woman. Bravo, Kathleen, bravo. And that's the thing. No one's going to care about Rey. She's not going to resonate in any way with people the way Luke Skywalker does today. And if Disney continues with this and really tries to erase, you know, we're closing out the Skywalker saga. Do you have any concept or any remote understanding of the property that you have? There's no closing out the Skywalker saga. Star Wars is the Skywalker saga, even if it's just about the Force, which leads to or back to Skywalker is the one to bring balance to it one day. You know, it doesn't matter what time period or galaxy or planets or whatever you're setting it in. So that's just one example. We talked Star Wars, we talked about princesses. Now look at Marvel. What the hell have they done to Marvel? None of those characters are resonating anymore. Iron Man's out of there. The Iconoclasts are pitching a fit already because they don't have a black girl already in place to take up the Riri's Ironheart nonsense character. We've got Captain Marvel, the blandest. Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, resonates with nobody. She does not resonate with anybody. Even the fans, even people that try to defend Captain Marvel, she doesn't resonate with them. She's just a good symbol for their political ideology. So that's what they're using. That's what they're pushing. But she's not gonna help them through anything. They're not gonna still care about her when the whole gender BS social agendas are no longer in vogue. She's not gonna last. That character is not gonna stick around like a classic, like a Captain America. But again, let's tear him down. Let's make him an old guy who gave up on you know, doing any good in the world anymore and just decided to go live his happy, selfish life. And that's what he did. That's what he did. You can't spin that any other way. I mean, you look at example after example, but I feel like I've gone through Marvel quite a bit. But that's the problem. Disney is succumbed to the iconoclast movement. They're allowing, not only for the new properties that they create now, to no longer worry about the hero's journey and these structures and these stories that they're not about. The patriarchy didn't just come along at some point in history and decide to implement this hero's journey. These stories that resonate with us developed with our human psyches. I mean, they're biological almost. They're in our minds, in our souls from developing into human beings. You can't just, you know, because it's in vogue and it's hip with our social agenda today, to just act like we don't need that anymore. We can turn around and do something else. Those stories don't work. Those movies won't last. The 3 or 4 people who are, you know, the cheerleading section on Twitter can try and make as much noise as they want about it, but it won't last. And that's why Disney's going to fall here. If it continues to pander to this group, it will not last. It's going to fall. All of these things that it might be getting all the right press for in the moment will not last, will not resonate. So I feel like I'm spinning my wheels at this point. I'm just going to kind of restate some of the things I already said, so I'll close this up. But there'll probably be more videos in this series, even going more specifically into certain stories. Perhaps, you know, when we hear more about Frozen 2 or something like that, you know, I'll make some more in this series, because it's sad. You know, I talked about in the first video how Disney just meant so much to me growing up, and classic Disney still does, absolutely. Walt Disney and his vision and all of the wonderful classics that Disney's given us throughout the ages means the world to me, but it's so sad that the company is just following in the footsteps of every other company, just crumbling into this social agenda driven nonsense. So that's all for now. Check out my own graphic novel, link in the description, Tales from the Stacks, in demand on Indiegogo for about another month, but that's it. After that, you won't have a chance to grab it anymore. So please do like and subscribe. Trying to grow the subscription base of the channel. It's been growing well, but I want to keep it going on up there. And until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the hero stories you love. Thanks for watching.